The city woke up every morning to his name. His face filled business magazines. His companies control markets. His decisions could raise fortunes or destroy them overnight. To the world, Alexander Vale was a symbol of success, a self-made billionaire who had climbed from nothing and conquered everything. Everything except peace. From the top floor of his glass tower, Alexander watched the city below. Cars moved like ants. People hurried with purpose. From his height, life looked simple, small, controlled, just the way he liked it. But inside him, nothing was controlled. His office was quiet, too quiet. No laughter, no family photos, no personal warmth. Only clean lines, cold marble, and walls covered with awards that meant nothing to him anymore. People feared him in meetings. They praised him in public. They whispered about him behind closed doors. Yet when night came, Alexander went home alone. The penthouse was large, beautiful, and empty. Every sound echoed. Every room reminded him of what was missing. He told himself he preferred it this way. Fewer attachments, fewer mistakes. But that was a lie he repeated to survive. Alexander was respected by millions, but known by no one. There was a past he never spoke about, a chapter of his life locked away so tightly that even he avoided thinking about it. Whenever memories tried to rise, he buried them under work, numbers, and long nights that ended too late. Still, some nights the past refused to stay buried. Like tonight, he loosened his tie and opened a small, old drawer in his study, one he rarely touched. Inside lay a single velvet box, worn at the edges by time. His hand hesitated before opening it, as if the object inside could wound him. Inside was nothing. The box was empty, yet his eyes lingered, as if the necklace were still there. That necklace had never been about money. It wasn't the most expensive piece he had ever owned. In fact, by his current standards, it was modest, but it carried more weight than all his wealth combined. It was tied to a promise, a love he failed to protect, a moment he could never undo. Years ago, he had given it to someone who mattered more than the empire he would later build, someone who believed in him when he was still nobody, someone he walked away from when ambition screamed louder than love. He had lost the necklace the same day he lost her, or so he believed. Alexander closed the box slowly, his jaw tightening. Regret pressed against his chest, heavy and familiar. He had made one decision back then, just one. He told himself it was necessary. That success required sacrifice. But that choice had shattered more than one life, his own included. People thought billionaires slept peacefully, wrapped in comfort. They never saw the nights when Alexander stared at the ceiling, replaying moments he wished he could change. The words he never said, the door he never turned back to open. The world saw a man who had won. But inside, he was still running from a younger version of himself, one who had loved deeply and lost everything because of fear. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant reminded him of tomorrow's schedule. Another deal, another public appearance, another room full of people who admired him but didn't know him. Alexander nodded, masking his emotions as he always did. When he was alone again, he walked toward the window. The city lights flickered like distant stars. Somewhere down there, lives were unfolding, full of pain, hope, and second chances. He told himself the past was gone, that what was lost should stay lost. But deep inside, something stirred, a strange unease, a quiet pull he couldn't explain, as if the world was slowly guiding him toward something he had tried to forget, toward someone he believed was gone forever. Alexander didn't know it yet, but fate had already begun moving. And soon, the past would no longer stay silent. The city had another side, one that never appeared in magazines or business reports. It lived in narrow streets, broken sidewalks, and crowded corners where hope struggled to survive. That was where Lena lived. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, she stepped out of the small, worn room she shared with others like her. The air was cold, and her stomach was often empty, but she never complained. Complaining did not bring food. It did not bring safety. It did not change anything. Lena had learned that lesson early in life. Her days were simple, but hard. She worked wherever she could, cleaning stalls, carrying boxes, helping shop owners for a few coins. Some days were better than others. Some days, she earned just enough to eat. Other days, she went to sleep hungry, telling herself that tomorrow might be kinder. She walked with her head held high, even when people looked past her or treated her like she didn't exist. Poverty had taken many things from her, but it had not taken her dignity. No one knew exactly where Lena came from. She didn't know either. As a child, she had been left in the care of an older woman who struggled just as much as she did. That woman had told her very little, only that Lena's past was complicated and that some truths were too heavy for a child to carry. Before Lena could ask more, the woman was gone, and Lena was alone. There were no photographs, no birth records, no memories clear enough to hold on to. Just pieces, broken moments, soft voices she could not place. A sense that her life had started long before she could remember. And one object, the necklace, it rested against her skin every day, hidden beneath her clothes. The chain was thin but strong, the pendant small, yet carefully crafted. Even in her hardest moments, she never considered selling it. People often asked why she wore it. Lena never had a clear answer. She only knew that it felt important, like it belonged to her in a way nothing else ever had. Like losing it would mean losing a part of herself. She had received it when she was very young, too young to remember the face of the person who gave it to her. She only remembered warm hands, a gentle touch, and a voice filled with emotion she couldn't understand at the time. The woman who raised her said the necklace was a gift, a promise, something meant to protect her. Lena didn't know from what. Sometimes, when the world felt especially cruel, she would hold the pendant between her fingers and close her eyes. In those moments, she felt less alone, as if someone, somewhere, had once cared enough to leave her this small piece of beauty. The necklace was not worth much in money, but to Lena, it was priceless. It was proof that her life had meaning before the struggle began. As the day moved on, Lena made her way through the busy streets, unaware of how close she was to crossing into another world. The tall buildings ahead shimmered in the distance, cold and unreachable. She had no idea that someone from that world, a man whose life stood in complete contrast to hers, was about to notice her, or that the necklace resting quietly against her heart carried a truth powerful enough to change both their lives. Lena adjusted the strap of her worn bag and stepped forward, focused only on surviving the day. She didn't know it yet, but fate was already guiding her steps, and everything she believed about herself was about to be questioned. The city square was alive with noise. People moved in every direction, voices blending together, footsteps echoing on stone, street vendors calling out to anyone who would listen. It was the kind of place where lives brushed past each other without ever truly meeting. Alexander Vale stepped out of his car, surrounded by the quiet respect that followed him everywhere. His presence alone seemed to slow the air around him. People noticed him, whispered his name, but kept their distance. He was here for a meeting nearby, just another stop in a long day. Or so he thought. As he walked through the crowd, his eyes passed over faces without seeing them. He had learned to block the world out, until something small, almost invisible, pulled his attention. A glint of light. He stopped, not fully, just enough to turn his head. Across the square, a young girl stood near a row of shops. Her clothes were simple and worn, her posture careful, guarded. She looked like someone used to being ignored. Alexander didn't notice her at first. He noticed what rested against her chest. For a moment, his mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. His heart skipped, not with excitement, but with confusion. The shape was wrong, too familiar. He took a slow step closer. The crowd moved between them, blocking his view. His chest tightened, as if something important was slipping away. When the people passed, he saw it again. The necklace. His breath caught. No, he thought. That's not possible. The pendant was small, delicate, shaped in a way he had memorized long ago. He had held it in his hands once, years ago, when his life was very different. When he had been a man capable of hope. His mind rushed to explain it away. Many necklaces looked alike. This was a city of millions. Coincidence existed, but his heart knew better. A cold wave moved through him as memory slammed into reality. He remembered the weight of it, the promise behind it, the day it disappeared forever. His fingers curled into a fist. That necklace had been given away under tragic circumstances. It was never meant to return. It was tied to a chapter of his life that had ended in loss and silence. Yet there it was, on her. Alexander's steps slowed, then stopped completely. His world shrank until the noise around him faded. All he could see was the thin chain, the familiar pendant resting against a stranger's heart. His thoughts clashed violently. How did she get it? Who gave it to her? Why now? His chest felt tight, his breathing uneven. This was not fear. It was something deeper, something that shook the foundation he had built his life upon. Across from him, Lena adjusted her bag, unaware that she was being watched. She felt the weight of the day, not the weight of history. To her, the square was just another place to pass through. The necklace was just a quiet comfort against her skin. She did not see the man standing frozen in the crowd. She did not see the storm behind his eyes. Alexander tried to move, tried to speak. His body refused, because in that moment, he understood something he had never allowed himself to believe. The past had not stayed buried. It had walked back into his life, openly, publicly, and without warning. And it was wearing the one thing he thought he had lost forever. As the girl turned and disappeared into the crowd, Alexander stood there, shaken to his core. Fate had found him, and there was no turning away now. Alexander Vale did not follow the girl. Not yet. He stood where she had vanished into the crowd, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. The noise of the city slowly returned, but inside his mind, time had stopped. One thought repeated again and again, refusing to fade. That necklace should not exist. As he walked back to his car, memories he had buried deep began to rise, sharp and painful. Years ago, before the towers, before the money, before the world knew his name, Alexander had been a different man. He was younger, hungrier, still capable of loving without fear. The necklace had been created during that time. It was not bought from a luxury store or chosen for its price. He had it made by a small craftsman, using simple materials but careful detail. He wanted something meaningful, not impressive, something that could hold a promise. It was meant for one person, a woman who stood beside him when his dreams were nothing more than ideas spoken late at night. She believed in him when no one else did. She gave him strength when he doubted himself. The necklace was his way of saying what words could not, that she mattered, that their future mattered. But life did not follow the promise. Success came faster than expected. With it came pressure, ambition, and fear. Alexander was offered a chance that could change his life forever, but it demanded sacrifice. And he chose wrong. The day everything fell apart was burned into his memory. Voices raised, tears falling, the air heavy with things that could never be taken back. He remembered placing the necklace in her hands, not as a gift of love, but as a final apology. Then came the tragedy. An accident, a disappearance, silence that followed like a shadow. No matter how hard he searched, there was no trace of her. No answers, no closure, and the necklace was gone. Alexander believed it had been lost forever that day, swallowed by pain, chaos, and his own cowardice. He told himself that was fitting, that he did not deserve to see it again. But seeing it now, on the neck of a stranger, shattered that belief. Back in his office, Alexander locked the door and sank into his chair. His hands trembled as he pressed them together. Guilt rose like a tide, drowning the calm mask he showed the world. Every mistake returned at once. The moments he chose ambition over loyalty. The silence when he should have fought harder. The way he walked away and never looked back. Old wounds tore open, raw and unforgiving. He had spent years building an empire to escape that pain. But the necklace had brought it all crashing back in a single moment. His thoughts turned to the girl. Who was she? How could she possibly have a necklace? There were only two answers, and both terrified him. Either the necklace had been passed down from the woman he lost, or the truth was far worse than he imagined. Alexander stood up, his resolve hardening. This was no coincidence. Fate did not play games without reason. If the necklace had returned, Then the past was demanding to be faced. No more running. No more hiding behind wealth and power. He would find the truth, no matter what it revealed, no matter what it cost him. And this time, he would not turn away. Alexander did not sleep that night. The image of the girl and the necklace burned in his mind, refusing to fade. By morning, his decision was made. He would not leave this to chance again. If fate had placed her in his path once, he would make sure their paths crossed again. But not with force, not with power, at least not openly. Through his team, Alexander learned where the girl spent her days. Small jobs, long hours, places the wealthy rarely noticed. It disturbed him how easily her life could be mapped out, how exposed she was to a world that offered her nothing. When he went to see her again, he left his driver behind. Lena was standing near a busy market, helping a shopkeeper stack crates. Her hands were rough, her movements quick and careful. She sensed someone watching her and stiffened. Then she saw him, the man from the square. Her heart tightened. He did not belong here. His clothes were too clean, his posture too confident. Men like him never approached her without reason, and the reasons were never good. She stepped back, ready to leave. Alexander raised his hand slightly, not to stop her, but to show he meant no harm. Still, the space between them felt heavy with difference. His world towered over hers, built on money and control. Hers was balanced on survival and caution. "You dropped this yesterday," he said calmly, holding out a small bag of groceries. Lena frowned. She hadn't dropped anything. She didn't take the bag. Her eyes moved to his face, searching for lies. People with power always wanted something. Alexander felt it, the wall she built around herself. He couldn't blame her. He had built walls of his own, only much stronger. "I don't need help," Lena said, her voice steady but guarded. "I know," he replied softly, and he meant it. That unsettled her more than if he had argued. Her hand drifted, without thought, to the necklace beneath her shirt. Alexander noticed. His chest tightened again. There it was. Still there. Still real. She followed his gaze, and her suspicion sharpened. So that's it, she thought. He wants the necklace. Her fingers closed protectively around it. "I won't sell it," she said quickly. "It's not for sale." Alexander froze. For a moment, neither spoke. He realized then how this must look. A powerful stranger appearing twice, staring at her chest, asking questions he hadn't even asked out loud yet. "No," he said, his voice low. "I don't want to buy it." She didn't believe him. People had tried before. They always offered money. Some tried kindness. Others tried fear. The necklace had always been the same problem. "It's all I have," Lena said firmly. "And it's mine." Alexander felt a strange mix of relief and pain. "Mine." The word echoed. "I just want to understand it," he said carefully. Where it came from. That scared her even more. Why would he care about her past? About something she barely understood herself? She took another step back. "I don't know anything," she said. "And even if I did, it's not your business." Alexander nodded slowly. He could hear the truth in her voice. She wasn't lying. But that didn't make the situation easier. Inside him, fear twisted tightly. If she didn't know, if she truly didn't know, then the answers he was searching for were darker than he imagined. They stood there, two strangers bound by a single object and a past neither fully understood. For brief moments, something softer passed between them, recognition of shared pain, of lives shaped by loss. Then it vanished, replaced by distance. Lena turned away, her trust shaken. Alexander watched her go, knowing one thing with certainty now. Their meeting was not an accident. Whatever connected them was deeper than money, deeper than class, deeper than coincidence. And until the truth was revealed, neither of them would truly be free. The days that followed were heavy with unspoken tension. Alexander did not force his way into Lena's life again. Instead, he stayed close, watching from a distance, learning quietly, letting time do what power could not. For the first time in years, he moved without control, without certainty. It unsettled him. Slowly, pieces began to surface. Through careful questions and quiet observations, he learned fragments of Lena's past. She had grown up moving from one small place to another. There were no records of her birth, no clear story of where she came from. The only constant in her early life had been an older woman who took her in when she was still very young. That woman had been kind, but guarded. She never spoke much about Lena's parents. When asked, she would change the subject or grow silent, as if the truth was too painful to touch. Lena remembered nights when the woman stared out the window, holding the necklace with trembling hands, her eyes full of a sadness that never fully healed. When Alexander heard this, his chest tightened. He knew that sadness. It belonged to a woman he once loved more than anything. Her name echoed in his mind, though he had not spoken it aloud in years. She had been strong, hopeful, and deeply loyal. She believed in love the way some people believe in faith, without question, and he had broken that faith. As Alexander listened, the memories he had tried to bury began to connect with Lena's story. The timeline, the places, the quiet disappearance that had haunted him for years. The woman had vanished shortly after he left her. At the time, he told himself she had moved on, that she had chosen a life without him, that letting go was easier than looking back. But now, that lie began to crumble. Lena remembered one clear moment from her childhood, a night when the woman held her close and pressed the necklace into her small hand. She said it was important, that one day, it might help Lena understand who she really was. She never explained more. Not long after that night, the woman fell ill. There was no money for proper care, no one to turn to. Lena stayed by her side, confused and afraid, until she was alone once again. When Alexander learned this, the weight of it crushed him. The woman had suffered in silence, while he built his empire, while he told himself the past was over. The necklace's journey became clearer with every detail. It had never been lost. It had been passed down, protected, carried through hardship and love. And it had survived, unlike the woman who gave it meaning. Guilt wrapped around Alexander like a tightening chain. Every success now felt hollow. Every achievement carried a shadow. His choices had not only shaped his own life, they had shaped Lena's. She had grown up without answers because he had walked away. The realization struck him slowly, then all at once. Lena was not just a stranger. She was living proof of his failure. Alexander sat alone that night, the city lights blurred by tears he hadn't allowed himself to shed in years. He finally understood what fate had been pushing him toward. The past had not returned to punish him. It had returned to be acknowledged. One final truth hovered just beyond reach, painful, unavoidable, and life-changing. And Alexander knew that when it surfaced, nothing would ever be the same again. The truth did not arrive gently. It came like a storm that had been building for years, quiet on the surface, violent underneath. Alexander finally asked Lena to meet him, not in a grand office or a public place, but somewhere neutral and small. A place where the truth could exist without witnesses. Lena agreed, though every step toward him felt heavy. She had learned to expect disappointment. Alexander looked different when she arrived. Not powerful, not untouchable, just tired. He didn't start with explanations. He started with a necklace. He placed an old photograph on the table. Lena leaned forward slowly. Her breath caught. The woman in the picture looked familiar. Too familiar. The same eyes. The same gentle strength. The same sadness Lena had seen growing up. "That's her," Lena whispered. "The woman who raised me." Alexander closed his eyes. "She was the love of my life," he said. "And I left her." The words fell hard between them. Piece by piece, the truth unfolded. The woman Lena had called her guardian was not a stranger. She was someone Alexander had once planned a future with. Someone he abandoned when ambition felt more important than responsibility. And Lena was not just connected to that past. She was born from it. The room seemed to shrink. Lena's ears rang, as if the world was breaking apart. Her hands trembled as she looked down at the necklace resting against her chest. It was no longer just a memory. It was proof. Proof of who she was. Proof of where she came from. Proof that her life of struggle had a reason she was never told. Shock at first, then pain, then anger. "So you knew," Lena said, her voice shaking. "You lived your life knowing, and I lived mine with nothing." Alexander's chest tightened. There was no defense left. No excuse that could survive the truth. I was afraid, he admitted. I thought leaving was easier than facing what I had done. Silence had been his choice, and it had cost him everything. Grief rose in Lena like a wave. Her childhood flashed before her. Hunger, loneliness, confusion. All the questions she asked that were never answered. All the nights she cried without knowing why. Her suffering finally had a name, and it hurt more than not knowing ever did. Alexander watched her break, and for the first time, his wealth meant nothing. He could not buy back time. He could not erase her pain. He could only see himself clearly at last, as a man who ran away. I don't want your money, Lena said, tears falling freely now. I wanted the truth. He nodded. And I failed you again by hiding it. The necklace lay between them now, heavy with meaning. No longer a symbol of hope, but of loss, silence, and love left unprotected. Lena stood up slowly. I need space, she said. I need to understand who I am without you deciding it for me. Alexander did not stop her. He had already taken enough. As she walked away, both of their worlds lay in pieces. The truth had been revealed, but healing was far away. And for the first time, they stood on opposite sides of a past that could never be undone. After the truth came out, the world did not stop. It never did. Alexander returned to his life of meetings, cameras, and sharp suits, but everything felt different now. His name was still spoken with respect, yet it sounded hollow in his own ears. The applause, the praise, the power, none of it quieted the weight pressing on his chest. Behind closed doors, he was unraveling. At night, he sat alone in his penthouse, the city glowing beneath him like a reminder of everything he had gained and everything he had lost. The truth followed him everywhere. He replayed his choices over and over, no longer able to hide behind success. For the first time, he asked himself a question he had avoided for years. What do I owe? Not in money, not in public gestures, but in responsibility. He could protect his reputation. He could keep the story buried. No one would question him. The world would continue to call him a visionary. But silence had already cost too much. Across the city, Lena lived a very different struggle. She walked the streets she had always known, but they felt unfamiliar now. Every reflection felt strange. Every memory carried new meaning. She was no longer just a girl who survived. She was someone with a past that had been hidden from her. Her thoughts were loud, restless. Who am I really? Where do I belong? She touched the necklace often, but now it burned against her skin. What once brought comfort now brought pain. It was proof of love, but also of abandonment. Proof that someone had known the truth and stayed silent. Anger rose in her chest, followed by grief. She wanted to forgive. She wanted peace. But forgiveness felt heavy. It asked too much too soon. Some nights, Lena imagined what her life could have been. Other nights, she reminded herself that imagining did not change the past. What mattered was the choice in front of her now. Alexander and Lena were both breaking, quietly, painfully, on opposite sides of the same truth. And somewhere between them stood forgiveness. Not as a gift, but as a decision. Alexander knew that if he stayed silent again, he would lose whatever chance remained. Yet speaking out meant risking everything he had built. His name, his control, his image. For the first time, wealth could not protect him. Lena knew that if she walked away forever, she could protect her heart. But carrying hatred would chain her to the pain she wanted to escape. Facing him again meant reopening wounds she barely survived. Neither choice was easy. The necklace lay on Lena's palm one night as she stared at it, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't know yet whether she would keep it, return it, or let it go. Across the city, Alexander stood by his window, staring into the darkness, knowing a moment was coming that would define him, not as a billionaire, but as a man. Both felt it, a turning point, and when the choice finally came, there would be no hiding from who they truly were. Alexander Vale had spent years believing that wealth could fix anything. Deals could buy loyalty, luxury could buy happiness, and power could buy respect. But none of that worked here. Not with Lena. Not with the past he had ignored for so long. He realized, painfully, that redemption was earned, not bought. He started small. not with grand gestures or flashy gifts, but with humility. He visited the small markets and streets Lena frequented, not to impress, not to command, but to understand. He asked questions quietly, listened more than he spoke, and acknowledged the mistakes he had tried for years to bury. "I have no right to ask for forgiveness," he said one afternoon, his voice steady but gentle. "All I can do is try to make things right, without expecting anything in return." Lena remained cautious. Her life had taught her that promises were fragile, that kindness often came with hidden costs. But she noticed the difference. This time, he was not imposing wealth. He was offering accountability, responsibility, and protection that did not smother. He helped without controlling. He offered support without dictating her life. When Lena faced challenges, jobs, housing, even basic needs, Alexander was there as a steady presence, not a master. He listened. He guided when asked. He respected boundaries. And slowly, Lena began to reclaim herself. Each small victory, solving a problem on her own, asserting her choices, standing firm in her independence, became a brick in the foundation of her strength. She was no longer just the girl who survived. She was someone who thrived despite the pain she had endured. The necklace, once a symbol of loss and abandonment, began to shift in meaning. When Lena touched it now, it carried memory and connection, not only sorrow. It reminded her of the past she had survived, of the truths she had uncovered, and of the cautious hope that had been placed in her hands. One evening, Alexander and Lena sat together in a quiet park, far from the city's noise. Words were few. They did not need to force conversation. Presence was enough. The air between them was still tense, but lighter, less weighted by betrayal, more tempered by understanding. "I don't know if I can forgive completely," Lena said softly, her fingers tracing the pendant. "But I can try to move forward." Alexander nodded. That's all I could ever hope for. For the first time, neither felt the crushing weight of the past alone. Redemption was no longer an abstract concept. It was being built piece by piece through patience, honesty, and care. The future was uncertain. The wounds were not fully healed. But for the first time in years, there was light, a cautious, fragile hope that tomorrow might be different. And in that quiet moment, Alexander and Lena understood. Healing did not erase the pain, but it could create a bridge. One built not with wealth or power, but with trust, respect, and the willingness to try again. The morning sun fell gently over the city, washing the streets with a quiet light that felt almost like a blessing. For the first time in years, Alexander Vale did not wake to the weight of regret pressing on his chest. The past had been heavy, but now there was space to breathe. He met Lena at the small park where they had begun to rebuild a fragile connection. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of flowers and distant rain. She wore the necklace openly now, not hidden beneath her clothes, as if the truth it carried no longer needed to be a secret. Alexander studied her from across the stone bench. She looked strong, resilient, dignified, unbroken. Not the girl who had survived by inches, but a young woman who had claimed her life for herself. "I can forgive you," Lena said softly, her voice carrying calm authority. "Not because the past disappears, but because I choose not to let it chain me anymore." Alexander swallowed, feeling both relief and a deep humility he had not known in decades. "I do not expect your forgiveness," he said, "but thank you for letting me try." The necklace glinted in the sunlight, catching both their eyes. Once, it had been a symbol of mystery and loss. Now it carried truth, survival, connection. It was not wealth or treasure. It was history, memory, and proof that even pain could endure and transform. Alexander finally understood that success and power had never brought peace. It was acceptance, accountability, and love freely given that allowed him to breathe again. He was no longer the man running from the past. He was simply a man facing it, ready to live with its consequences and lessons. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her childhood and the years of questions lift slightly. She had a life ahead of her now, forged in clarity. Her past no longer defined her. it informed her. She had dignity. She had choice. And she had the courage to step forward into a future she could shape. They did not hold hands. They did not promise forever. They only shared a moment of understanding. Forgiveness was not forgetting. Love was not ownership. But there was recognition, respect, and the quiet healing that comes when truth is finally faced. Alexander watched as Lena walked away, confident and upright. The city seemed different somehow, brighter, quieter, alive with possibility. He knew that their lives would continue separately, but connected by something far deeper than coincidence. The necklace swung lightly against her chest, no longer a secret, no longer a reminder of loss. It was proof of endurance, proof of survival, proof that truth, painful and raw as it might be, could forge a future stronger than any wealth or power. As Alexander turned back to his office, he felt an unfamiliar peace. Not triumph, not control, acceptance. And Lena stepped into her new life, her steps steady, her heart free, carrying the lessons of the past, but unbound by them. Fate had not reunited them to punish. It had reunited them to heal. And in that quiet, fragile understanding, a future was finally forged. One built not on riches or regrets, but on truth, courage, and the hope that even broken beginnings can lead to something whole.